Imagine your loved one vanishing into thin air with no trace, leaving behind a sea of unanswered questions. Across America, 3 harrowing mysteries have gripped the nation. A Hollywood star's mysterious drowning at the peak of her career, a hydrogeologist's baffling disappearance amid cries of foul play, and the stolen innocence of a small-town child. Despite happening in very different places, these tragedies all share one unsettling reality. Danger can find anyone, anywhere, at any time. Daniel Robinson was a brilliant 24-year-old hydrogeologist who vanished without a trace in the Arizona desert in 2021. Did the young man go on a spiritual quest? Or did his work make him a target for desert property developers? Daniel should have had the world at his feet. The bright young geologist had defied the odds, excelling academically and professionally despite being born with a physical disability. With a groundbreaking career studying the mysteries of the earth, his future shone as bright as the desert sun he spent his days under. But one morning, everything changed. Daniel headed off to a remote work site outside Phoenix as usual. Then he just disappeared. Wild theories emerged about his final hours, from descending into bizarre, obsessive behavior to accidentally ingesting mind-altering drugs. Daniel had never allowed his physical differences to define him, despite being born with only one fully developed arm. From a young age, he had embraced challenges head-on, excelling in academics, sports, and music with a tenacity that inspired all who knew him. After graduating with honors, his career was just taking flight, and his future burned as bright as the desert sun overhead. But on June 23, 2021, that future was abruptly extinguished. He had forged a career as a geologist and was employed by Matrix New World Engineering in Phoenix in 2019. As a hydrogeologist, his job entailed testing the water and collecting samples from well points. This meant he often met with representatives from companies wanting to drill wells. That morning, he was set to meet with Ken Elliott from Weber Water Resources at a well point in Buckeye, Phoenix. According to Ken's initial police report, Daniel arrived on the site at 9 a.m. The two had never met, but Elliott noticed strange behavior that morning. According to Elliott, Daniel stared into the distance and made incoherent statements. Elliott said that Daniel was saying things that did not make sense, like asking if Ken wanted to go rest, and then asking if he wanted to go to Phoenix to rest. 15 minutes later, he apparently got into his vehicle, waved at Elliott, and drove off, disappearing without a trace. Elliott says he was concerned about Daniel's state of mind and called the project manager to alert him that Daniel had left the site. By 3 p.m., Elliott was told that Daniel could not be reached by his employers or family. So he set off in his vehicle to try and find him. Following the tracks still visible because of the recent rains, Elliott drove off into the desert but could not locate the missing man. The next day, when Elliott spoke to police again, his statement read that Daniel had arrived at the site at 9:30 a.m. and had left at 9:45 a.m. So what really happened on that day? What dark secrets lay buried beneath the desert sands? And would his loved ones ever uncover the truth behind this baffling disappearance? Back in South Carolina, Daniel's father, David, received an alarming call from his daughter informing him his son was missing. David immediately tried to locate his son by contacting his friends, checking his apartment, and calling his cell phone. But these efforts were unsuccessful. 12 hours after he was last seen, the family reported him missing. The next day, police accessed Daniel's navigational system but found no GPS data. However, police were able to ascertain that the phone last pinged at 10:30 a.m. As the day passed with no sign of his son, David grew increasingly worried and decided to take the 2,000-mile drive from his home in Florida to Phoenix, Arizona. As the investigation into the disappearance progressed, the police reports started to paint a picture of a young man who was seemingly acting erratic in the days leading up to his disappearance. 2 days before he went missing, he took a bus to Waffle House, even though he owned a car. A waitress who had seen him there previously said Daniel was acting skittish and would not converse with her. That same day, he texted his sister, Davisha, saying he had an emergency, but he did not answer any of the texts or her calls for some reason. His coworker and former roommate, Roger, said his friend had unexpectedly cut his hair short and acted unusually subdued and dry. hinting at issues over a girl he knew but who didn't know him. His odd comments also revolved around getting rid of his ego, believing in miracles, and mentioning God and religion, subjects he rarely discussed. The next day, he acknowledged having issues over a girl he couldn't have. Roger felt Daniel seemed to think he had to change himself for this unknown woman completely. His coworker sensed he was grappling with profound turmoil in those final days, though the actual depth remained unclear until his shocking disappearance.
Hey Daniel, this is Roger. I know that work is trying to get hold of you, but I'm less concerned about them than I am about you. You can call back, let me know what's going on. I need to pick up somewhere, whatever. Just give me a holler. I'll make sure you're okay.
Several theories emerged regarding Daniel's potential state of mind leading up to his disappearance. His father had mentioned to police that his son told him about a woman he had fallen in love with in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. David found it strange, as his son apparently knew nothing about the woman. When asked if she had noticed anything about her brother lately, his sister, Davisha, said that Daniel had come over to her place one day and just sat there for 30 minutes, completely unresponsive. Then he just got up and left. She told police he had fallen in love with a woman named Caitlin from the suburb of Levine, who told him to listen to podcasts by spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle. Davisha claimed these podcasts had changed the way her brother looked at life and made him view things with a more positive energy. Investigations finally revealed details about Daniel's alleged relationship with Caitlin, to whom he had delivered groceries while working a side hustle for Instacart. According to the report, the two had a brief encounter on Sunday, June 13th, when she and a friend invited him inside to hang out while they were drinking. But she denied any sort of relationship between the two of them. However, his reported fixation on Caitlin and the unsettling final text he had yet to send her suggested a possible decline in his mental well-being. Caitlin told police that Daniel's behavior towards her became increasingly creepy, with him showing up at her house uninvited and repeatedly texting her.
I'm outside of your place.
Please stop doing that. I'm not even home. This is not okay.
I guess it's not.
Not you guess. I've told you it is not okay and to not come to my home unannounced.
7 days after his encounter with Caitlin, he told her he loved her. She had explicitly told him to stop contacting her, but he sent her one final text the day before his disappearance. The world can get better, but I'll have to take all the time I can, or we can, whatever to name it. I'll either see you again or never see you again. 18 hours later, Daniel vanished without a trace. His Instagram photos had all been deleted as well. 3 days after his son went missing, police finally launched an aerial and ground search in the vicinity of his job site. But the search involving cadaver dogs and drones came back without any joy. The following search for the young man only happened a week and a half later. Not feeling like the Buckeye police were doing enough to find his son, David started recruiting volunteers to search the Sonoran Desert.
I started my grassroots search around July 3rd, 2021. And I want to tell you, thank you to all the people who worked tirelessly out there in that desert with me in the 118-degree weather. I really appreciate you guys. Like I said, thank you so much for being out there with me. A lot of times pray when we before we go out to search, because we are a family out there in the search. And I really want to thank everybody who's been out there with me.
Then, after nearly a month of fruitless searching, the case took a turn on July 19th. Daniel's vehicle, a blue 2017 Jeep Renegade, had been spotted at the bottom of a 20-foot ravine, less than 3 miles away from the job site. The rancher was convinced that the Jeep had only been in that location for a short time before he discovered it. But how could that be if Daniel had been missing for over a month? According to the rancher, he had been in that ravine on July 17th looking for his cattle, but only came across the vehicle when he returned on July 19th. The rancher said the vehicle seemed too clean, which was strange since it had been in desert conditions for over a month. Also, it rained 3 times before the Jeep was found. He added that his cattle would have licked at the vehicle if they had encountered it. Furthermore, the rancher allegedly saw a work boot stuck under the vehicle's wheel, which seemed strange given the accident scene. This raised some serious concerns for the Robinsons. After an extensive aerial and ground search of the area, how was it possible that the vehicle was not spotted less than 3 miles from the job site where his car had been for the last month? The vehicle had sustained significant damage. The airbags were deployed, the windscreen was shattered, the sunroof had been kicked out, and the front end damage was consistent with a rollover collision. Furthermore, his clothes were found near the vehicle, but his wallet, phone, and laptop were still inside the car. But no sign of blood or the missing hydrogeologist. 2 black socks, one Adidas and one Nike, were found. A matching Nike sock was found about 3 miles from the scene. Several unopened water bottles were also found in the car. If Daniel headed into the 115-degree desert sun, surely he would have taken some water. Buckeye police ruled out foul play, but David remained convinced something more sinister was at play.
Is that, his theory is that my son maybe had a severe head injury. That explains why he probably shredded all his clothing off. He also told me that he also believed that my son walked out in the desert undressed because he wanted to be away from his family and his friends, and he most likely wanted to go join the monastery and become a monk.
Unsatisfied with the police department's case handling, David hired private investigator Jeff McGrath to examine the evidence. McGrath's findings, however, contradicted the initial police report.
Well, the damage to the vehicle, it didn't match the area that the vehicle was found in. It had some damage along the driver's side that is unexplainable by the detectives. It also had some intruding damage into the windshield that didn't match anything in the area as well. Plus, I also had the airbag control module report that tells me what that vehicle was doing 5 seconds before the airbags deployed and what was going on with that vehicle since the airbags deployed.
And what does that tell you?
It tells us that the vehicle traveled another 11 miles after the airbags did deploy on that vehicle. It also tells us there were 46 additional ignition cycles on the vehicle after the airbags came out, and that the report says the vehicle was traveling about 30 miles an hour for 5 seconds prior to its final rest, or airbag deployment, I should say. And that's not possible in the area where the vehicle was found.
McGrath's investigation suggested inconsistencies in the evidence, leading him to theorize that the crash scene might have been staged. Additionally, the data showed that the vehicle had traveled 11 miles after the airbags were triggered, raising suspicions that the initial crash may have occurred elsewhere before ending up in the ravine. If the Jeep was found less than 3 miles from his job site, how did that account for the 11 miles clocked on the odometer after the airbags were deployed? His findings directly contradicted the Buckeye Police Department's conclusion that the vehicle had sped up as if trying to jump the ravine and then attempted to drive up the other side of the ravine, rolling over and accounting for the damage. Furthermore, red paint was found on the front bumper of the vehicle, although there were no traces of paint in that area. However, a web sleuth who interviewed David and McGrath previously used Google Maps of the job site to raise an interesting theory, which could account for the red paint transfer on the car.
The main entrance gate to the site. I didn't see it when I came here looking, because I was looking for something else. Now, that's the picture. So let's go back to the map. I'm not lying. I called David right away and I told him, there's red paint on the main gate. He said, what? I said, David, if I were you, I'd go back out there and examine that gate with your eyes to be sure that the gate had not been modified in any way, shape, or form.
As the initial search effort unfolded, significant discrepancies emerged between the private investigator's assessment and the police department's interpretation of the evidence, adding layers of mystery to this puzzling disappearance. Meanwhile, Buckeye police managed to extract the data from Daniel's cell phone, which paints a picture of the geologist's interactions before he disappeared.
Hey Daniel, this is Ken with Rebel Water Resources. I'm out here at Trillium off of Sun Valley Parkway. I'm waiting on fuel. I think it's going to be a while. He was all the way over at Fort McDowell here at 6 o'clock this morning. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. It's, I don't want you to come all the way out here and just sit and wait. But I was going to give you a heads up when you're about an hour away from being ready to go and stuff. But if you can, just give me a call when you get a chance.
The last call he made was to Ken at 9:28, but his call was never answered. The phone records also show the exchange of texts from his sister and brother on the day before he went missing.
It's an emergency.
Hey, I called. Are you okay? Seriously, are you okay? Hey, I'm getting worried. I'm not mad, just confused. I had a bad dream a few days ago, but I didn't tell. Daniel, please be safe. I love you. Please answer. I'm sorry.
Daniel? Hey, so I'm sure by now you know Davisha told me about tonight. You don't have to talk about anything right now. But can you please call me tomorrow at some point? Can you do me a favor and maybe acknowledge this message? You worried me a bit, and I just want to see if I can help you in any way. Love you.
His recent phone search history also tells the story of a man who's going through something.
Should I call her? Love changed me. Delete Instagram account. Shooting tempeh. I'm okay to do things I hate.
While David is adamant that his son was not suffering from any type of mental health problems, the exchanges appear to be concerning to the family. As search efforts intensified in the desert area where the Jeep was found, multiple sets of human remains were recovered, including a human skull, which was later identified to be that of a 35-year-old missing man.
You can see behind me we did identify, they were human leg bones, human femurs. We found a couple femurs and we found hip bone. At this point, the medical examiners confirmed it, and we don't know whose it is, but that'll be in the days to come. But for now, we have see Buckeye Police has taped off the scene, and we'll wait for further information.
The discoveries only deepened the mystery surrounding his fate and raised more questions about the potential connection to his disappearance. Not long after the recovery of the Jeep, Buckeye Police handed over all the evidence collected to David and his PI McGrath.
The Buckeye Police Department has turned the vehicle and all of the evidence over to myself, my team. So I have all the evidence. So if they're actively investigating it, they don't have any evidence or anything to really investigate other than they can come out here in the desert with us and help us.
Is that customary for police to hand over evidence to a private investigator in a case like this or any other?
Not at all, no. I've never seen it in my career in law enforcement or as a private investigator.
Why would they do that? Did they say?
They said they told me they were done with the investigation. They say now that they have an ongoing investigation. So I can only go by what they told me in person, was that they don't have a crime, therefore they don't have an investigation, so they turned everything over.
However, Buckeye Police say his missing person case remains open and active. Tempe police had been dispatched to check his apartment after he went missing, but did not enter the home then. Only 2 weeks later, on July 7th, police finally entered the house. According to McGrath, there were signs that someone other than police and family had been in the house.
But my investigator was able to go in there after that to actually process Daniel's apartment. And what he found during that time was that someone was in his room looking for things. They tore up the room looking for something in his bedroom part, and then they also went into his closet and he was pulling things down and looking for something. But we didn't think much of it at the time, other than that it could have been Daniel looking for something. He just tore it up looking for it, or something else was going on. We wasn't too sure. But with this information that we received from the from the Tempe Police Department with the forensics and the date and time, now we understand that someone was not only just looking in his room, they also was going through his computer after June the 23rd of 2021 when he went missing.
Later, forensics analyses were done on his electronics, including his computer and gaming system. The forensic information revealed that someone had been inside the apartment using Robinson's computer to look through his Google history and fooled around on the device. Nearly 5 months after his son went missing, relations between David and his PI appear to have soured, but not before McGrath revealed some interesting information when talking to the Buckeye Police. The PI told police that he found it odd how David's daughter, Davisha, never seemed sad or upset during the many interviews and conversations they had about the disappearance. According to the report, Davisha told him that during the emergency text incident, her brother said they would have to get used to him disappearing. The private investigator also informed the police that, according to Davisha, 2 weeks before his disappearance, she and David had discussed the possibility of getting an involuntary petition to have Daniel undergo a mental health evaluation. In December 2021, Buckeye received word that David had parted ways with his PI. According to a recorded phone conversation between McGrath and a colleague, he could no longer afford to work in the case, having already spent more than 200 pro bono hours investigating. According to the police report on the recorded conversation, the investigator also had difficulty reconciling David's foul play theory. When Buckeye police called McGrath firsthand, he told police that the two parted ways because David was skeptical about them and did not want the PI to share their findings with authorities, which McGrath thought was counterproductive. What was clear was that the Robinson family's confidence in the official investigation had begun to wane. David remains resolute that his son's disappearance was linked to foul play. But the lingering question remains: why? Why would someone want to hurt his son? And could it be related to the work he was doing? The answer could lie in the desert his family has been scouring. As a hydrogeologist testing groundwater supplies in the area, Daniel may have uncovered data that called into question the viability of a massive housing development and its plans for 100,000 new homes, given the region's rapidly declining groundwater levels. Any of his findings that might have raised doubts about sustainable water sources could have posed a threat to parties with vested interest in seeing the controversial project move forward. If his work revealed concerning information about dwindling groundwater or potential underground fissures that conflicted with the developer's ambitions, this may have motivated foul play against him. With each passing day, more questions arose. Was Daniel's reported fixation on Caitlin a harmless infatuation or a sign of deeper turmoil? Did his potential interest in spirituality and self-discovery inadvertently lead him down a dark path? And what secrets do the conflicting interpretations of the physical evidence hold? Clues that could unravel the enigma of this vanishing act? What do you think happened? Let me know in the comments below. Sadly, the Baum family knows what it's like for their child to vanish. But in this case, it would be over a decade before anything came to light. In 2009, the small town of McCleary was shaken by a tragedy too horrifying to imagine. Fearing the worst from the start, what they eventually found still haunts the community to this day. It was a normal Friday night for 10-year-old Lindsey Baum when she said goodbye to her friend and began a short walk home. But she never made it back that night. The child disappeared without a trace, just 11 days shy of her 11th birthday. Shockingly, Lindsey had a chilling conversation with her mother the day before she went missing.
And she said, "Mom, I just have this really bad feeling that something bad's gonna happen." And I said, "Like what?" And she said, "I don't know, I just have a feeling." She knew something was coming, but she didn't know what.
Did the young girl have a premonition of the darkness that would follow? That Friday, Lindsey had spent the day reveling in the summer warmth, swimming at a friend's house. Later, she and her brother went home briefly before heading out again to another friend's place on Maple Street. The evening was filled with a kind of carefree joy typical of childhood summers. As most siblings do, Lindsey and her brother got into a trivial argument, apparently over a bike. Frustrated, her brother decided to head home alone, leaving the 10-year-old behind. Unfazed, Lindsey asked her friend's mom if she could spend the night. When the request was denied, Lindsey gathered her things and prepared for the short walk home. At approximately 9:15, she set off from her friend's house. She set off alone for the short 10-minute walk around 9:15. A neighbor saw her between 5th and 6th Streets, the last known sighting of the young girl. As the minutes ticked by with no sign of Lindsey, her mother, Melissa Baum, grew increasingly worried. At 10:45 p.m., she made the dreaded call to the police, reporting her daughter missing. This call set in motion a widespread search effort and investigation that would span nearly a decade, generating countless leads and potential persons of interest. One such individual was Tim Hartman, a local shop owner and jeweler. Nearly 2.5 years after Lindsey's disappearance, investigators identified Hartman as a person of interest. Police searched Hartman's home and business in October 2011 and seized several pieces of evidence, including an apparent fingernail from the passenger side of the car, ropes and straps, numerous computers and storage devices, a pink sheet with unknown stains, a brown duffel bag with assumed human hair, and handwritten notes regarding Lindsey. Hartman told police he wasn't in town during the hours of her disappearance, but CCTV footage in a convenience store showed him and a McCleary at precisely the time Lindsey vanished. But Hartman denied having anything to do with the disappearance and says he simply doesn't remember being in McCleary at the time when she vanished. Police and FBI officials have so far not been able to link the evidence to Baum's disappearance. Another potential suspect emerged when an informant, Erwin Bartlett, told Lewis County detectives a chilling tale. Bartlett claimed that a friend had confessed to accidentally hitting a young girl in that area with his car while driving under the influence. Panicking, the man disposed of the girl's body by putting it in a crab pot and dumping it in the ocean. While the claim seemed far-fetched, it gained new significance nearly a year later when a child-sized skull was indeed discovered in a crab pot off the coast of Westport. The remains were later carbon dated and found to be a female, but around 2,300 years old. Numerous search warrants were executed throughout the years, and hundreds of interviews were conducted, but the case remained cold until a breakthrough came in the fall of 2017. Hunters in a remote area of eastern Washington stumbled upon human remains that were later confirmed to be those of the missing Lindsey Baum, more than 100 miles away from her hometown.
The fact is, a monster stole my 10-year-old little girl, and they murdered her, and they dumped her like trash in the woods. So my fight now has turned from looking for my daughter to finding who killed her. This person is a monster, and I grew up teaching my children that monsters didn't exist. So now when you're telling your children monsters don't exist, you're lying. Just keep that in mind. They do exist, and they don't look like monsters. They look like your next door neighbor. They look like the person who lives down the street or the person who works in your school. Yeah, I urge anyone that has any information, any knowledge of any kind to please come forward. We need justice. The people who did this to Lindsey deserve to be punished. And the children still out there, your children, deserve to be safe. And as long as we allow monsters like this on our streets, none of our children are safe.
The discovery brought a sense of closure for Melissa Baum, who now wears her daughter's ashes in a pendant necklace. But it also reignited the pursuit of justice. A $40,000 reward has been offered for information, leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Lindsey's untimely demise. In 2017, authorities discovered a troubling collection of inappropriate materials at the Seattle home of the elderly Emery brothers, aged 78 to 82. Among these items was a missing person flyer for Lindsey Baum. The brothers, who lived 30 minutes from McCleary, were arrested for possessing illegal content but could not be charged with alleged past misconduct due to the statute of limitations expiring. While they were suspected of potential involvement in Lindsey's disappearance, there was not enough evidence to make any arrests related to her case. The investigation took another turn in 2024 when authorities began exploring a possible connection between Lindsey's murder and Paul James Beaker. The 50-year-old man had recently been convicted of assaulting a teenager in McCleary in 2003, just 6 years before Lindsey's disappearance. Beaker also lived in McCleary in June 2009, when Lindsey was abducted. Due to this, authorities identified him as a potential suspect in Lindsey's case in 2021. The investigation into the case, however, remains open and ongoing, with the Baum family still hoping to bring an end to this decades-long mystery. Even in the glamorous world of Hollywood, dark secrets can remain buried in death. It's baffling, isn't it, when a public figure's life comes to an unexpected end and the circumstances around it remain murky, even after many, many years. One such case that stands out is that of Natalie Wood, a revered Hollywood icon. She was most known for her role in the classic film West Side Story, and her death, at the young age of 43, still remains shrouded in uncertainty. Natalie was out on a yacht with her husband, Robert Wagner. He's been eyed suspiciously since she drowned back in 1981. The cause? Still unsolved. We're gonna dive into this real-life Hollywood mystery to try and piece together what really happened. According to testimonies, this is what happened in Natalie's last 48 hours alive. On November 27, 1981, she, her 51-year-old husband Robert, and their friend Christopher Walken decided to spend some time on Robert's new yacht. It was named Splendor, a homage to Natalie's successful film Splendor in the Grass. They anchored off the Avalon coast. To get to the shore, they used a small boat called Valiant, named after one of Robert's famous roles. Despite having a good time, Natalie was uncomfortable being surrounded by water, especially with a storm brewing.
I've always been terrified, still am, of water, dark water, seawater.
An argument broke out between Natalie and Robert about moving the yacht closer to the coast for safety. After the spat, Natalie and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, returned to shore and checked into a hotel. The next day, Natalie, wanting to smooth things over, returned to the boat. Later, Natalie and Christopher Walken went for drinks on the island, with Robert joining them later. After returning to the yacht, the atmosphere became tense. 38-year-old Christopher discussed the importance of their careers, prompting Robert to accuse him of meddling in his marriage. Upset, Robert smashed a wine bottle on the table. Natalie left the room, cleaned herself up, and then disappeared. Her husband thought she had gone to bed. But when Robert finally decided to retire for the night, he went to his cabin expecting to find Natalie, but she was gone. He searched for her on the deck, but she was nowhere to be found. To his alarm, the small boat, the Valiant, was also missing. Now, Robert knew about Natalie's fear of water, so the idea of getting her onto the boat by herself, especially in the middle of the night, seemed unlikely. Panicked, Robert radioed the Coast Guard and then went to Doug's Harbor Reef hoping she might be there, but the place was closed. He searched the dock area but found no trace of the 43-year-old. It was around 1:30 in the morning on Sunday, November 29th, when Robert officially reported Natalie missing to the Coast Guard. Meanwhile, Captain Davern reached out to a harbor patrol, but despite their combined efforts, there were still no signs of the Hollywood star. As the night turned into early morning, the Coast Guard deployed helicopters to join the search. At about 5:30 a.m., they found the Valiant drifting past Blue Cavern Point. The boat's engine was off. The position of the oars and some scratches on the boat suggested that someone had tried to get on board. 2 hours later, the unthinkable happened. They found Natalie's body floating not far from where the Valiant was found. She had marks on her right arm, minor ones on her left wrist, her legs, left knee, and right ankle, as well as a blister on her left cheek. When her body was found, Natalie's wrist bracelet was missing, and she was in a nightgown. All of this implied that she had no plans to leave the Splendor herself. Robert and Christopher were still on the yacht when they got the devastating news. Robert, still in shock and denial, did not want to identify the body. He wanted the last memories of Natalie to be of her alive. So, Captain Davern took on the grim task. The news spread like wildfire. In a flash, Natalie's family, Hollywood, her fans, and the whole world were plunged into mourning. And then came the aftermath of the death. When Natalie's body was autopsied, the report showed that her blood alcohol content was 0.14%, a bit above California's legal driving limit of 0.10%. According to the medical examiner, that's roughly equivalent to about 7 or 8 glasses of wine. The coroner stated that the marks on Natalie's body did not suggest any physical abuse. Instead, he believed she got them while attempting to climb back onto the boat. Robert Wagner, who had been cooperating with the investigation, had a theory of his own. He suggested that after leaving the saloon and freshening up, his wife might have noticed that the dinghy, the Valiant, was banging against the yacht due to the rough waves. In trying to secure the dinghy, Natalie might have slipped, fallen into the water, and drowned while attempting to climb onto the boat. This theory was shared with the public by the police. After 2 weeks of intense investigation, they concluded that Natalie Wood's death was an accident. She was laid to rest at the Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles, not too far from where she lived. But Natalie's mysterious death fueled numerous rumors and speculation. Some even linked her death to the so-called curse of Rebel without a cause, since she was the third member of the cast, after James Dean and Sal Mineo, to die under tragic circumstances. Years later, in 2009, a book called Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor was published. The book was written by the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, and his friend, Marty Ruley. In it, Davern made some shocking revelations. He claimed that Robert Wagner was responsible for Natalie's death, and that the couple had a massive argument on the night she disappeared. He also said her husband didn't immediately look for Natalie when she went missing from the yacht. But then, footage resurfaced from 1992 showing that the pair had only been trying to profit from Natalie's death. Then, in 2011, almost 30 years after the tragedy, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department decided to reopen the case. The investigation carried on for 2 years, and in 2013, they changed the cause of Natalie's death to drowning and other undetermined factors. But the story did not end there. In 2018, the case was reopened yet again when new witnesses came forward. These people, who were in boats nearby on that fateful night, claimed they heard noises and screams. One witness even stated that she saw a man and a woman arguing on a boat. With these new testimonies, the LAPD changed their stance and classified Natalie Wood's death as suspicious. And then, Robert Wagner made some confessions in his autobiography. Robert, who had since remarried actress Jill St. John, acknowledged that he'd been jealous of Natalie's friendship with Christopher Walken, and that the two of them had argued that night. However, when the case was reopened, Robert chose not to cooperate with the police. Because of his lack of cooperation, Robert Wagner was labeled a person of interest. And then there's another theory making rounds on the internet that is said to be from Captain Davern himself, who had helped the LAPD in 2011 by providing new information. This theory paints an even more dramatic picture of that night. It suggests that the argument between Natalie and Robert was quite heated. So much so that Natalie fell off the yacht, and Robert saw it happen but didn't attempt to rescue her. The 43-year-old supposedly screamed for help for several minutes. Davern, who heard her, wanted to help, but Robert had allegedly locked the captain in his cabin and told him to stay out of it. Christopher Walken came out from his cabin as the argument continued, but at some point they realized that Natalie's cries for help had stopped. So, the three men on the yacht made a pact. Wagner, Walken, and Davern allegedly agreed that if one of them was in trouble, the other two would back him up. They quickly sought the services of a well-known Hollywood lawyer, who somehow managed to get the authorities to close the case. Although there's no solid evidence to confirm this version of events, and while Davern's statements to the police remain undisclosed, the testimonies from people on nearby boats suggest that things aren't as straightforward as they may seem. In 2021, some interesting new insights came to light regarding Natalie Wood's case. Natalie's sister, Lana Wood, didn't think the death was premeditated, but she was convinced that Robert was involved. However, in 2022, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department put a rest to such a speculation. They announced that they had cleared Robert Wagner in their investigation into Natalie's death. Lieutenant Hugo Reynaga made a statement saying, "All leads in the Natalie Wood case have been exhausted, and the case remains an open, unsolved case." So, as it stands, Natalie Wood's death remains a mystery that continues to baffle and intrigue us to this day. Before you go, I'd love to know if you like having multiple stories in one video. Let me know in the comments down below. And if there are any cases you'd like for me to cover, you can email them to me using the address on my channel. Thank you.